Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Pooja Narayan. By profession, I run my training organization by the name of Mindfluential, and I am an NLP practitioner and emotional intelligence master and trainer. Today, our topic of discussion for this episode is cells that fire together, wire together. I heard the phrase neurons that fire together, wire together more times than I can remember or count since I became an NLP practitioner. This ignited my interest in the area of neuropsychology and neuroscience. And plagued by the question, why do I hear this phrase so often? I went to do a little bit of research of my own. And I would like to share them here with you to give you a window into how our brain is structured and how we work because of that. This phrase was first used in 1949 by Donald Hub, a Canadian neuropsychologist known for his work in the field of associative learning. According to him, every experience, thought, feeling, as well as physical sensation triggers thousands of neurons which form a neural network. And when you repeat an experience over and over, the brain learns to trigger the same neurons each time. I'll try and simplify this for you. Our brain is made up of building blocks which are called neurons. They are nothing but nerve cells, but we have over billions of neurons in our brain alone. And these neurons have a unique ability of communicating with each other. And they do so by release of chemical messages. When one neuron cell releases a chemical message, it is absorbed by the neuron cell which is next to it. The moment that happens, a connection, or as we would call it in neuroscience, a synapse is formed between the two neurons. And this is how roadways or neural pathways are formed in our brain through which the neurons talk to each other. This communication process is what is known as neuronal firing. And I think, as would be true for any relationship, the neurons which communicate frequently with each other, the connection between them starts strengthening. And the messages which travel the same pathway again and again start transmitting faster and faster. This definitely goes to say that the more you run a neural circuit in your brain, the stronger it becomes. And so does the corresponding behavior, attitude, and emotion. And this is the birthplace of another old saying that practice makes a man perfect. So the more you practice anything new, driving, juggling, learning a new musical instrument, learning a new language, the stronger the pathways related to it in the brain becomes. And with enough repetition, it becomes a part of who you are. It becomes automatic. This was all about neural firing. We now move on to the wiring part of it. And let's use the help of an example to understand this better. When a student, say very early in the schooling stage, second or third standard, has a poor classroom experience on a regular basis, he's either bored by the curriculum, by the teaching style of the teacher, or is being constantly bullied or shamed by the teacher. He begins to link classroom, he begins to link schooling with something negative. Whatever the reason, in his brain, he has started wiring schooling with negativity. As the years pass by, this gets embedded in his neural network, and he responds to schooling, the remaining 7, 8, 9 years of schooling, based on that negativity, either by checking out mentally or by bunking classes, or there are so many other ways. Unfortunately, the research in the field of psychology also tells us that humans are hardwired to focus on the negative, because that's what helps protect us. That's what ensures our survival. But even in the less stressful time, our mind tends to focus on the problems that needs to be solved, the things that needs to be done, or the mistakes that we did in the past, rather than thinking about the positives that we experience throughout the day. In some way, I can still say that it helps us learn, it helps us stay on the top of the things, but having a unbalanced prolonged focus on the negative tends to develop negative emotions in us, and it crowds out the positive in our life. It becomes like a vicious circle. The more we hover over a negative thought, the more entrenched it becomes. And negative and traumatic thoughts have a tendency to loop. They play themselves over and over. That is why thoughts which cause anxiety, fear, panic, obsession, compulsion are so difficult to combat until you do something about it consciously. Yes, this is very much the origin of the concept of conditioning or programming. Let's go back to the example of the student in the school. The stigma of the memories of being bullied or shamed or failure in school remains with an individual years after the school has ended. And more often than not, they respond to all adult situations coming from that almost for an entire lifetime. You might be wondering, not everybody has had such bad experiences of being harassed or traumatized as a kid. It does not really have to be that big. A thing as simple as you being constantly told to just do as your elders say as a kid, or not even being told. If you have seen your parents, the elders around you, blindly following their elders, not questioning them, not raising their voice even when they are wrong, that is how you start approaching life, because that's the program that fits into your neural pathways. The tricky part is, even after you become an adult, you become independent, you still keep looking for that approval, for that acceptance. Because the wiring between taking a decision and seeking approval is so strong that whenever you want to do something new, the neurons related with acceptance, with approval, fires with it. Before it's your parents, it's your elders. Later on, they are replaced by your spouse or by your children. Because remember, not only the cells that fire together wire together, but the cells that have wired together always fire together. Tragically enough, this is why it's so difficult to heal patients who have suffered abuse. Anything distantly similar to the situation, physical contact in any form, a place which is similar that reminds them of the incident, can be enough to trigger the same response of fear, of threat, of running away, even after years have passed. But fortunately, the opposite is also true. By focusing on positive thoughts and experiences, it is possible to strengthen the capacity of our brain to fire up the circuits which are related to well-being and happiness. And nowadays, researchers are learning another part of the truth, that for learning something new, for establishing new experiences in your brain, it is probably far more important than practice to unlearn the old things, to break the old connections. In neuroscience, this term is called synaptic pruning. The word pruning means trimming something. Imagine your mind like a garden, but instead of growing vegetables, fruits, or flowers, you are growing the connection between neurons. There are certain cells which are responsible for speeding up this growth, this connection between neurons. There are certain other types of cells which are responsible for removing the waste, for pulling out the weeds, killing the pests, raking the dead leaves. These cells are the ones which prune the synaptic connections in your brain. But the big question still is, how do they know which ones to prune? The answer is possibly more simple than you think. Those neural connections which are used less and less in our brain are marked by a certain protein. Those proteins are detected by the pruning cells, and the cells then go and trim off those neural pathways. This is a natural process which keeps happening in our brain throughout the day. And this is why sleep also plays a very important role, because the brain cleans itself out when we are asleep. Have you ever felt that your brain is full? Usually, when we are preparing for an exam, an interview, learning a new skill, started off with a new job, well, it might just be. When you learn a lot of new things, your brain builds connections, but they are ad hoc, inefficient connections. Your brain needs to organize a lot of those connections and build more streamlined, more efficient pathways. And it does so when we are asleep because our brain cells shrink by 60%, up to 60%, to make way for the waste to be removed. Don't we often use the phrase, let's sleep over it? That's because when you get up, you do feel more clear headed and you're able to take the decisions quickly or work on something more easily. Thinking with a sleep deprived brain is like making your way through a dense jungle by using a knife. It's slow, it's exhausting, it's overgrown. Thinking on a well rested brain is like wandering happily through the paths that are clear and connect to one another at distinct spots. The trees are in place, you can see far ahead of you. It's invigorating. This is how you can control what gets deleted from your brain. The synaptic connections which are used less and less are marked for recycling, and the ones that you use are the ones which gets oxygenated and watered. So be mindful about what you think. If you're spending too much time thinking about what's going on in your colleague's life, what's wrong in your life, and not so much on your job, which pathways do you think will be marked for removal? What you focus on prevails. You literally craft your own mind by choosing what you pay attention to. It's of course understandable that whatever happens to you throughout your life is hardly in your control. But how much you're affected by it and what affects you is. So instead of focusing on the things that hold you back, imagining scenarios that are unlikely to ever happen, clear your mind. Try to focus on the now and try to put your mental energy towards the things that benefit you. It really is a game of strategy. How smartly can you use your brain is what makes you smart. And focusing on the things that benefit you and resisting the temptation of the things that don't benefit you, that is what smartness is. In order to delete something, simply stop thinking about it. Even if you're reminded, shift your attention. Sooner or later, it will be marked for recycling. Try to associate your dreams with success and not the hurdles on the way. Because the key really is to remind yourself, cells that fire together, wire together.